Good evening, viewers. You are watching my show Talk Politics with Himanshu Nirban, and I am Himanshu Nirban, and we are joined by today retired Major General Prabdeep Behl, sir. And we are going to speak today on a topic that is the hottest topic in these days in the world economics, and that is the war between Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine is being invaded by Russian armies since February 24, and it's been total of 46 days war is being going on. And on the both of fronts, either it is the Ukrainian army or it is the Russian army or Russian armed forces, they have got massive losses on the both sides. And for the discussion of all these things and why all this kind of war has originated, we have been joined by Pradeep sir, who is a very well-known defense analyst of India, and he has a very in-depth knowledge of about how the Russian army is being trained because he has served mostly with the Indian army for the 39 years, and most of his time in the training sessions, he has been joined by different generals or different senior officers from the Russian army of the former USSR. So, sir, you are welcome to my show.
Thank you very much, Himanshu. It's always a pleasure to be on your show.
So, sir, there are a few questions about this ongoing war. So, sir, I just want to ask you for my viewers that, sir, what is the actual reason that this war has started between Ukraine and Russia? So, please, can you just explain about this thing?
You see, Ukraine got its independence in 1991,
Yes.
right? When the USSR collapsed, and it goes back to that era. And there were large number of security assurances which were there between all these states, uh, which were part of USSR and which formed independent countries, that they would not join NATO. However, over a period of time since 1991 till today, we have seen that about 15 countries which were of the erstwhile Soviet bloc have now joined NATO. Now, when you join NATO, you are giving permission for NATO forces, including the American forces, that they can be positioned on your soil. Because as when the NATO believes that if any country is attacked, which is a part of NATO, is attacked, it is an attack on NATO and not alone on that country. So when it came to Ukraine, you see, Ukraine had the largest number of nuclear stockpiles of Russia, of USSR, of the Soviet era. So Russia and the US, they agreed, and it was agreed that Ukraine will give up all its nuclear stockpiles, and that it would be a sort of a neutral country as far as the nuclear uh, domain was concerned. So now, as a goodwill gesture, as a security assurance in 1994, these stockpiles were removed from Ukraine. While the nuclear plants are still there, we have heard of nuclear, Chernobyl and all that. So these are remaining. But of late, what happened that NATO also pressurized Ukraine to become a part of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. Now, when this was happening, Russia got a little worried that if Ukraine joins NATO, the NATO forces, including the American forces, will be sitting right on the borders of Russia. So it was always in Russian interest that the Ukraine remains neutral. But of late, what happened that the tilt towards NATO on the Ukrainian side, because of the president Volodymyr Zelensky, Russia felt that they are not going to listen to him, but they will listen more to NATO. So what it did was it tried to apply pressure by positioning its forces all around on the east and onto the north around Ukraine. It was a more of a threat to say that, look, I will use force if you are going to join NATO. Ukrainians and the Ukraine government was very, enthusiastic, and they said that we have the backing of NATO, we have the backing of America, and so they were a little adamant, and I would say they were a little more confident from the very start because they had the so-called backing. They were of the opinion that if Russia attacks, the NATO forces will also come to their assistance, which has not happened. As far as the Russians were concerned, they initially enmassed all their troops all along the border. About 1,50,000 troops, 150,000 troops were deployed all along the border between Russia and Ukraine, and some forces in Belarus because Belarus is also aligned towards Russia. Now, when this pressure did not work, when the pressure did not work, and the Western Bloc, that is the Americans and the NATO countries, sort of started giving more, support from outside, verbal support. That don't worry, we are there and we will help you out if in case something happens. Nothing will happen. And then there was this information warfare also going on. If you remember, President Biden had announced much earlier, before the 24th itself, I think he announced on 21st February that the Russians are likely to attack uh, Ukraine. So this kind of tension was building up all this while. When Ukrainians did not pay heed to what the Russians were wanting, the president of Russia felt that Mr. Putin felt that it was now high time that he entered uh, this place, the country Ukraine. Now, when that happened, in my opinion, the overall aim was that maybe it will bring about, when he walks in, the Ukrainian people will come to his support and Ukraine will fall. So the aim was not destruction. You see, when you prepare to fight a war for capturing territory by force, your planning is different. In this case, the overall plan was, I will come in, they will surrender, there will be a regime change. As he said, denazification will take place, people will come to his support, and Ukraine would perhaps become, his overall aim would have been to make it a neutral country. In the meanwhile, if you remember, just before the Russian forces came into Ukraine, the two territories of the Donbas region on the eastern side is the coal bed. It's rich in coal. The Donbas region is a coal basin, which consists of these two territories of Luhansk and Donetsk. So these two territories, he declared them independent. Now, while we have not heard much about these two territories, but what we know of, that because they were pro-Russia, and they were pro-Russian rebels which were fighting the government forces of Ukraine, the Ukrainian army carried out a lot of atrocities against the Russian people of these two territories. So, keeping all that in mind and the support that Russia was giving to these two territories, they, with all that in mind, he declared these two territories as independent.
Yes, sir.
So, this was a prelude to that. And when he walked in, when his forces came inside, not prepared to fight, but to act as a force which you walk in and they will surrender and there will be support. And when his plans failed, but now the plan, why have his plans failed? Why has it not worked? It has
Yes,
not
sir.
worked because of, I think it was a major intelligence failure on the part of the Russians. And they could not imagine the kind of support the people will give to the Ukrainian government. It is Some say it is because of the leader, Zelensky. Of course, they thought that Russians thought that Zelensky may just go away. The Americans also gave him a choice of pulling, but that did not happen. He stayed put, and he was able to rally the Ukrainian army as also the civilian population to fight the Russian army. Now, what happens in a military campaign? If you
Yes, sir.
understand a classic military campaign,
Hmm.
there are two facets. One is non-kinetic. Non-kinetic is wherein physical force is not applied. There is no fighting involved. The other is
Hmm.
kinetic operations. Kinetic operations is where you actually physically fight. So the non-kinetic phase starts much earlier. So that is where the information warfare, the cyber attacks start coming in, right?
Yes,
Even
sir.
the financial war which is being fought today, the war, financial warfare, the sanctions and things like that. All these are part of the non-kinetic. And the non-kinetic is very prominent pre-war, during the war, and even after the war. So initially it was more on the information warfare, which had started earlier. Disinformation, we have seen, we will discuss that also.
Yes, sir.
So now what happens when you have a large force coming in, 150,000 people coming in, large number of tanks and everything, with the aim of just entering. If it was a classical war land, you would have had missile attacks taking place first, aerial attacks taking place first, all the infrastructure and the air defense systems being suppressed, being destroyed by pinpoint attacks, all the industry would have been targeted, and then physical movement of troops would have come.
Yes, sir.
It would have been preceded by this kind of shock and awe tactics. If you recollect the Gulf War, it was shock and awe. You give shock first, people are stunned as to what has happened, and then you enter. In this scenario, they entered first, they themselves got shocked, and now they are regrouping, refighting. I mean, changing their primary aim. In this case, the primary aim was what? Regime change,
Yes, sir.
right? We enter, we change the regime, they become
Hmm.
favorable to us, we get out, no destruction. Now it is the secondary aim. After what they have seen in Kiev, what is happening in Kiev, that they are unable to fight them out because of the resistance, because of the support which is being given by the West. You see, this war could have ended very fast, but the West, the Western countries, the NATO bloc is supplying weapons. They're not fighting themselves. They're getting the
Hmm.
Ukrainians killed. After all, the Russian demand is what? Be a neutral country. Don't favor NATO. Be a neutral country and survive. But here now, it is like in a game, you have more spectators shouting than the
Hmm.
this is the coach is also acting. Go, 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 pushing those people inside. So that is why there are a large number of casualties on both sides.
Yeah.
And now Russia is trying to get grip of the situation once again. See, they attack from the east, they attack from the north and the northeast. North part of it, capital, getting the capital has somehow not worked out because urban warfare. So the urban warfare part of it is the most difficult warfare. It takes months and years to clear. If there is resistance, there is a lot of time. So
So,
in this
sir,
case,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, please just go ahead, sir. Please just go ahead.
yeah. So now the realignment of the aim is taking place. Now they are looking at the secondary aim. The primary aim, the fall of Ukraine, the fall of change of regime, has been perhaps put on a back burner, and now the aim is they are going towards the secondary aim. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So my next question to you is that, sir, like Ukrainians and the Ukrainian army has claimed that they have killed so far 19,000 Russian soldiers, and like they have destroyed many tanks and helicopters and aircrafts. So are you so much sure that this kind of destructions has occurred with the Russian army, or on the other hand, when we speak about the Russian army's official statement, they just declared that more than 1,300 soldiers of theirs have been killed and more than 4,000 have got injured, or either 1,000 have got surrendered. So, how do you see about this information warfare in this kind of scenario, in this war?
You see, uh, now I will just tell you a very simple thing. Information warfare is the mind game. It is playing with the minds of your own army, the, weakening the mind of the enemy, boosting the morale of your own civilian population, and also to shape the opinion of the world against the other country. Should be the opinion of the world should be favorable to you, and it should go against the other country, your enemy. So that is the part of information warfare which takes place in the psychological domain. It has always taken place. Earlier, if you in World War II also you had propaganda, you had leaflets being dropped and things like that. So you are playing on the mind of the people.
Yes, sir.
Now, in the information warfare, a major component is disinformation. So today you cannot believe what the Ukrainians are telling you, right?
Yes, sir.
Now they have also mastered the art of social media, usage of social media to an extent that we have seen. You know that ghost of uh, the fighter pilot, the ghost of Kiev,
Yes, sir.
who's supposed to have killed, brought down 9 Russian aircraft, and thereafter it was found it is not. There is nobody, no ghost which is existing. Then if you go uh, that Snake Island, where only 13 Ukrainian soldiers were there, and the 13 soldiers told the Russian, ships to go back, and they used abusive language and said, "We will die, but we will not surrender." In actuality, they had surrendered.
Hmm.
They had been captured by the Russians and later on released. The point is that all this disinformation will continue. Basically, trying to tell the world that Russia is degraded. Yes, Russia is degraded. There is no doubt about it. If you are giving, the people have been trained. A lot of anti-tank guided missiles have been given. Launchers have been given to the Ukrainians. And urban warfare, uh, small teams can create havoc on a large army also. So there has been a lot of destruction. Now, where is the Russian failure?
Yes, sir.
That is very important. Primarily, when you go into fight, your logistics, your khana pina has to be very sound. Logistics involves not only food and water, it includes ammunition, it includes medical support, it includes fuel. When you go into battle, it's not a very simple thing. It is a very calculated thing. You have to calculate how many days will you fight, how many days of rations will you carry, how much of fuel will you carry, what is your consumption, how will you provide that fuel in the front. What we saw are images where their Russian tanks are coming on the highway. That is a recipe for.
Передаю. Нитро, я удар.
Алло,
Нитро, я удар. Слушаю тебя.
удар я Нитро. 6-й полк почти потерял.
Что?
6-й полк пока не могу доложить, пока собираю. Очень много потерь. Ждали. Голова колонны попала в засаду. Командир полка погиб, по остальным разбираюсь.
Сейчас как разберешься, всех соберешь, мне доложишь, как понял.
Оттуда били артиллерия, танки.
Disaster.
Yes, sir.
So I think the initial tactics employed were totally different because the aim was different.
Mhm.
Or the thought process was different. So when you run out of food, you have to look for food as a soldier. When you run out of fuel, you will dump your tank and you will run for shelter. It is plain and simple. So it has been a logistics. The logistics planning has gone faulty because, in my opinion, the aim was different.
Mhm.
Had the main aim got been met, it would have been fine. So you do not kindly believe and what casualty figures are being told. We will come to know of this at the end of the war. Russia will always say less, Ukrainian will say 10 times. So that is how this information warfare will continue.
Yes, sir. Sir, my next question to you is about, sir, how do you see the withdrawal of Russian forces from the Kiev region, and what was the main reason that Russian army withdrawn from its win-won areas? How do you see, sir, this kind of tactical withdrawal?
Yeah. So as I said, the primary aim, capital, if you fight, capital had fallen, if they had surrendered, if uh, the President Zelensky had moved out, there was a change in regime, Kiev would have been in their hands. But it did not happen, right? So the primary aim is not met. So what is the secondary aim? You do not want, as a military power, if your primary aim is, or your alternate aim, now you are going for your alternate aim, you do not want your troops to be consumed earlier in a different area. You want to use them elsewhere. If I am not going to get a success, if there is a failure, we never reinforce failure. We always reinforce success. In the military, we say never reinforce a failure. Reinforce a success. Right? So now they are pulling out the troops. They will be used elsewhere. Elsewhere means towards the east. They do not want to waste their energy on something which they are not going to attain in the short term. Right?
Yes, sir.
And where they have had losses. They want to now reinforce success where they will push from where they have already gained.
Hmm.
So this is a realignment of forces. So in a battle, there will be some withdrawals and some pushes, which will continue, attacks which will continue. So I see that in this light, and I think it is a sensible move on the part of the Russians to do, not to not to reinforce the failure.
Yes, sir. Sir, so my next question and last question to you is that, sir, how do you see, like, sir, we have just seen some singular markings on many of the Russian military vehicles marked as Z, V, and O. Sir, how do you see all these kind of things? Is it to avoid a friendly fire, or are these a part of a tactical military planning just to avoid a friendly fire incident?
Yeah, basically it is just that it's more of a when you classify different organizations or tanks or equipment.
Yes, sir.
When you have that, you have this symbols to denote various things, which is common and known to everybody, and it is for recognition purposes. And these symbols will always be there. First thing when we go into a battle is we don't want to show which force it is. So we take off the identity.
Okay.
If you go if you see a military convoy even in India, sometimes you will find there is mud on all these symbols. They're all covered,
Mhm.
but there'll be some symbol on it. Something has to be there to be able to recognize. So this is basically all that. These symbols will always be there.
Yeah. So you have just spoken about the symbols. So how do you see the future of upcoming warfare? Like there has been a constant force of use of force by the Russian army in the Mariupol and the Azov Sea and
Correct.
in the Baltic Sea region. So how do you see that the future of Ukraine is Ukraine is going to be a landlocked country, or the Russians will withdraw from the area that they have won so far?
Very interesting question. Now, what is going to happen? Now, what is the secondary aim? You should have asked me what is the secondary aim.
Yes, sir.
Now, the secondary aim, in my opinion, of the Russians is that the entire of the East, basically, if I cannot have the entire of Ukraine, I must at least have an area which is a buffer zone between me and between the Russians and the Ukrainian army.
Yes, sir.
So it is that particular territory which is going to along the border of Russia on the east. The aim will be, ideal aim is the river line. The ideal aim is if you can split Ukraine east of the Dnieper, the river which flows north to south, south to north. That river line should be the ideal river line where the defenses should be based. Where eastern part would be with Russia and the western part can be Ukraine and with NATO or whatever. So that would be an ideal condition for the Russians. Even if they cannot achieve that, they would want to have a belt, at least the belt of the Donbas region, that is the two independent states they have declared that they are independent. That is Donetsk and Luhansk. That region, and then they want to link it with Crimea,
Hmm.
which they already have. So they will have land bridge which will connect the Crimea with that. Then a total control over the Black Sea. Now, when you do that, when you have control over the Black Sea and you have a buffer zone here, then they reduce the risk to their territories, that is to Russian territories. And that is what the overall aim would be. To connect that, Mariupol is a very important city, which is urban warfare will take time. 45 days is it's it's not easy. And when you have support of the rest of the world there, and then foreign fighters and equipment coming in, so I think with this more destruction is taking place in Ukraine. See all the equipment which has been supplied by the West to the Ukrainians and to the local fighters, the resistance. So basically, they will have a buffer zone. They will occupy these territories
Yes, sir.
and make sure that they are separated.
So thank you very much, sir, for this wonderful interview, and it was a pleasure to meet you in this.
I hope it was worthwhile, and this was just my views on this. And this is an interesting war which is likely to spread over a number of days more. It's not going to end so abruptly. So there are a lot of lessons have to be learned, even for the future of warfare. It's changing the nature of warfare and the nature how people are going to react. The spirit of nationalism is very evident here in Ukraine.